We have a special guest with us tonight, Senator King. On January 3rd, 2013, Angus King Jr. was sworn in as Maine's first independent United States Senator. Senator King joined a long line of independent leaders from the state of Maine. He is a steadfast believer in the need for greater bipartisan dialogue and relationship building among legislators. Senator King began his career as a staff attorney for Pine Tree Legal Assistance in Skowhegan, a little far from here. In 1972, he served as chief counsel to the United States Senate Subcommittee on Alcoholism and Narcotics in the office of former Maine Senator William Hathaway. In 1975, he returned to Maine to practice with Smith, Lloyd, and King in Brunswick. In 1983, he was appointed vice president of Swift River Halfslund Company, I hope I'm getting that right, an alternative energy development company working on hydro and biomass projects in Maine and New England. 6 years later, he founded Northeast Energy Management Incorporated, a developer of large-scale energy conservation initiatives at commercial and industrial facilities in Maine. In 1994, Senator King was elected Maine's 72nd governor. During his 2 terms in the Blaine House, he focused on economic development and job creation, and also achieved significant reforms in education, mental health services, land conservation, environmental protection, and the delivery of state services. He was re-elected in 1998 and by one of the largest margins in Maine's history. Senator King was born in Alexandria, Virginia in 19... Okay. He comes from Virginia. He graduated from Dartmouth College. We have a couple of Dartmouth College graduates in this room too. And I won't say the year. From University of Virginia, and also graduated from the University of Virginia Law School. Senator King is married to Mary Herman and has 4 sons, Angus III, Duncan, James, Ben, and 1 daughter, Molly, and 6 grandchildren. He lives in Brunswick. I would like to introduce our United States Senator, Angus King Jr.
Well, it's hard to know where to start except to say that I wanted to be born in Maine, but my mother was in Virginia that day. And I thought it was important to be near her. It was a big day for her. But it's wonderful. As was mentioned, I have 5 children ranging in age from 44 to 21. And I used to say when I ran for governor, I was the only candidate with 2 in college and 1 in diapers. And it's been an adventure, 4 boys and 1 girl, and the oldest boy has now moved back to Maine. There is hope. They've got to go out and experience the traffic in Boston or New York, and then they appreciate coming back to Maine. And we've been involved. Our kids went to Brunswick schools and Brunswick High, and so what you're doing is so important because the schools can't do it all. I've been meeting all day. I've been to high school in Portland, and a middle school in Freeport, and an elementary school. And one of the problems in education today is we're asking teachers to do everything. And it's the parental involvement is one of the things that makes schools work. And so what you're doing here, this PLTI program is really fabulous, and I didn't know about it, but I've learned about it since knowing that I was coming here. But it makes so much difference. And I thought rather than give you a kind of conventional speech, I used to teach at Bowdoin and Bates College. And the course, the president of Bowdoin asked me to teach, and I said, okay, I would. And he said, so you'll teach something in the government department, right? And I said, no, that's not what I want to do. He said, well, what do you want to teach? What do you want to talk about? And I said, I want to teach something about leadership. Because the older I get and the more experience I have, the more important I find leadership is. For example, if I could wave a wand to improve American education, the single first thing I would do was put a great principal in every school and a great teacher in every class. And it's the leadership that makes all the difference. So I decided I wanted to teach this because I wanted to try to understand it. And the course was called Leaders in Leadership because I think that we learn most from stories. And so instead of, I'm going to give you the whole course tonight, but you don't have to pay Bowden's $50,000 tuition. But we are always told stories and then said, okay, what do we learn? And we started with a fellow named Ernest Shackleton, who was an Antarctic explorer, Eleanor Roosevelt, Lincoln, Martin Luther King, Margaret Thatcher, Bill Belichick, all kinds of people from different walks of life, Joshua Chamberlain, of course, from Maine, who taught us about how we lead. And you all have learned leadership is your middle name, right? I mean, that's what you're about here. So I'm going to give you a condensed version. And what we did at the end of this class was come up with a list of what it is, what it takes. So if you bear with me, if I need a marker, here it is. I'm going to share with you. Like I say, I'm giving you the headline version of my class. If I can get the pen. And share, and actually, I taught a similar class in the Senate 2 weeks ago. My favorite hour of the week in Washington in the Senate is the Wednesday morning prayer breakfast. And I like it for 3 reasons. One, it's a quiet moment that in the midst of all the craziness to have a little reflection and connection with your faith. But secondly, it's the only bipartisan event of the week. Seriously, isn't that awful? It's the only time that senators get together without reference to party. And then the third reason I like it is that each week, and there's no press and no staff, it's just all senators, and each week a different senator is asked to present mostly about their faith, but inevitably it's about who they are, where they came from, what their parents did. And I will reassure you, what's really cool about the U.S. Senate is it's full of ordinary people, regular people. And here's something very interesting, and I think some of you in this room may understand. A large number of U.S. senators come from single-parent homes. Isn't that interesting? I don't know why, but and they stand up to speak, and Joe Donnelly of Indiana, the first thing he said was, "My mother died when I was 10, and my father raised the 4 of us." Or another guy, my father disappeared when I was a year old, and my mother raised us. And some of them, they had tragic deaths. But it's very interesting, and these are all people, well, maybe not Jay Rockefeller, okay? But everybody else is from pretty normal backgrounds. Jay Rockefeller had to make an appointment to see his father. I mean, that was a different kind of life. But people are from mostly middle-class backgrounds all across the country, and so they asked me to speak 2 weeks ago. And I had already spoken a couple of years ago and talked about my own background, so I said I don't want to do that again. So I fell back on my teaching, but this was a prayer breakfast, right? So my talk to the prayer breakfast was Jesus on leadership. And I took the qualities that I'm going to list for you and went into the scripture, but these are qualities that, and somebody said, well, was Jesus a leader? I said, are you kidding me? 2,000 years later, there's still a church on every corner. You know, I call that leadership. But these are qualities that I think apply in the Sanford schools, in businesses, everywhere, anywhere you're engaged in any kind of organization. So here's the list that I use, and there's nothing magic about this, but the first is a vision. It's amazing how many people get into leadership positions without any idea of why they're there. You have to start with some plan. What is it you want to do? Joan's project back here started with a mission statement. Some kind of vision of what it is you want to accomplish. What's your goal? And as I say, a lot of people say, well, you know, my goal is to have the corner office or the nearest parking space. By the way, if you want to know the best part of being a U.S. Senator, it's the parking. Generally, it's right out front. Not tonight, but generally. So, vision, you got to start with some idea of what it is you want to accomplish. Second, a really important leadership quality, and I'm sure this is where my spelling, but did you know bad spelling is a sign of high intelligence? Persevere, is it A-N-C-E or E-N-C-E? Perseverance? A-N-C-E. It's A-N-C-E, good. Perseverance, stick to it. Nothing that humans do is easy. There are always going to be obstacles. There are always going to be people who say, we can't do that. You know, I used to have fourth graders come to my office when I was governor, and I'd give them a tour of the office, and up behind the desk was the Maine State seal. And of course, above the seal was the Maine State motto, Dirigo, right? Everybody knows, Dirigo. And these little kids would say, what does that mean, Governor? And I'd say, that's the Maine State motto. And the teachers would all say, oh, the governor's going to teach. And I'd say, the Maine State motto is, we've never done it that way before. How many times do you hear that, right? And then the gates grow. No, we can't do it. We've never done it that way before. And the teacher looks, oh my Lord, what's he saying? I say, no, it means I lead. But perseverance means you've got to push through that. We've never done it that way before. And in fact, in education, we've got to be thinking of new ways to do it. And that's what I was seeing today up in the Portland-Freeport area, was people coming up with new ways to engage the students, to get them excited about education, and you have to persevere. Number 3 is the quality of empathy or compassion. You've got to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. If you're going to be a leader, you have to understand what other people are going through. You can't just tell them what to do. You've got to have some feeling for them. And you know, Bill Clinton was the master of empathy. They said he could walk into a room of 100 people, 98 of them liked him, 2 didn't. He could tell who the 2 people were, and he spent the rest of the night working on them, because he could sense that. And by the way, I've met Bill Clinton. He's an amazing guy. Every meeting with Bill Clinton is a seduction. Male, female, young, old. You know, it's quite an experience to get a handshake from Bill Clinton. I'm just reporting. You know. But empathy, understanding other people, being able to put yourself into their shoes is a really important part of leadership. Number 4, this one won't surprise you, communication. If you can't communicate, it's hard to lead. Communicate. I got it. Communication. And this is the one. There's a lot of discussion. Are leaders born or made? You know, can you learn leadership, or is it just something you're born with? I'm not going to try to answer that, except I can tell you, communication you can learn. You can learn, you can practice it. Winston Churchill, probably the greatest communicator of the 20th century, was born with a serious speech impediment. In fact, when he was a wanted man in South Africa during the Boer War, the wanted poster had his picture and it says, has serious speech impediment. That was how he was identified. He wanted to be a leader, so he learned to overcome it. He practiced speaking in front of a mirror. He had a bad lisp. And Joshua Chamberlain, the great leader from Maine, I just recently learned had a bad stammer when he was a young man and was in college. And he overcame it. And so you can learn to communicate. And those of you, I know a lot of you say, oh, I'm so nervous, I don't want to make a speech. Just do it. And everybody's nervous. I was nervous. I was sitting here saying, you know, I don't know what I'm going to say. But you just do it and practice, and you can learn to communicate. That's definitely part of the skills of leadership. Okay, let's see, what number are we on? There are only 10, so you know where we are. Is that 5? That's 4. Here we go to 5. Number 5 is optimism. Optimism. People want to be optimistic. You can get people sometimes by scaring them, but ultimately you need to have a positive message. Optimism. Napoleon said, a leader is a dealer in hope. Isn't that interesting? A leader is a dealer in hope. So you've got to have some kind of positive message if you're going to inspire people and get them to do something they wouldn't otherwise do. Number 6 is trust. People have to trust you. If you're going to be, and you can't, some people think, okay, I'm now the head of the parent-teachers club and therefore they're going to trust me because I'm the head. It doesn't work that way. You've got to earn people's trust. What I like to say is you have to put trust in the bank so that when it comes time to ask people to trust you, you have something to make a withdrawal from, you see. And you've got to be, I'm going to talk about honesty and character, but you have to demonstrate that you can be trusted. Because in a crunch, if the mayor says, we've got to pull together and do the right thing to save the downtown park, if people don't trust him, then it's just going to fall on deaf ears. And you have to build that trust over time. It doesn't automatically come by virtue of being in a leadership position. 7 is the team. I probably should have made that number 1 or 2. Nobody leads by themselves. You can't lead a Girl Scout troop by yourself. You need people with you. 2 of my teammates are here today, Aisha Woodward, who works with me in Washington, and Bonnie Pothier, who works with me here. My whole leadership philosophy, if you forget everything else I've said, I can boil it down to one sentence. Hire good people and take credit for what they do. It works. I'm absolutely serious. You're only as good as the people who are working with you. And I can tell you it's certainly true in Washington. And you have good people. And the other thing is, a lot of people want people around them that are like them, that agree. That's a waste of time and money. If you want people that agree, you can hire mirrors. How am I doing? Great. You know, you want people who disagree. One of my favorite sayings is, if both of us agree on everything, one of us isn't necessary. You want to have people in your team who aren't going to necessarily say, yes, sir. They're going to say, why are we doing this? Or is this the right way? And you have to encourage people to give you the straight scoop, because nobody wants to be impolite, or particularly if you're, the exalted superintendent of schools. People are a little bit afraid. You, the leader, has to say, it's okay to tell me when I'm full of something unpleasant. How was that with kids in the room? I did okay. Okay, that was on the fly. But building a team, having good people, and particularly people, as I say, who don't necessarily agree with you, but will give you straight and important advice. Number 8, we're getting close. I'm only guy standing between you and dinner. 8 is creative and flexible. And if you've ever done anything in any kind of project, you know it never goes according to plan. You can have the best plan in the world, but it's never going to go according to the way you plan it, and you have to be flexible and willing to change. My favorite story, and this involves both vision and flexibility. Some of you in this room may be as old as I, although I'm looking around, I don't think so. But some of you may remember yesterday was my 71st birthday, so that's me. Yesterday. Thank goodness my mother didn't wait one more day. I'd have been an April Fool. I've always thanked her for that. But when Federal Express first started, the Federal Express Company, it started, I don't know, 30 years ago or so, their motto was absolutely, positively, overnight guaranteed. Remember that term? Absolutely, positively, overnight guaranteed. That was the vision, okay? Well, there was a Federal Express driver whose job it was to pick up Federal Express packages. And in the communities, there'll be there are boxes, like a mailbox. And that's where people put the Federal Express box, and the driver comes around at the end of the afternoon and picks up the packages and takes them to the airport, and they all fly to Memphis. Did you know that? They all fly to Memphis, and I'd love to be there at midnight when they swap all the packages, and then they all go back where they're going. So anyway, this driver's driving around. He looks in the box, there's a package down there, he puts the key in the lock, and the key breaks off in the lock, and he can't get it open. But he has the vision, absolutely, positively, overnight guaranteed. And he's flexible and creative. He looks across the street, there's a hardware store. He goes over to the hardware store, he buys a very large crowbar. He comes over to the box. He lifts the entire box out of the ground, pulling the screws and everything out of the ground. He puts it in his truck, takes it down to the airport, gets a drill, drills it out, the package comes out, and it gets to its destination. That's flexibility. Now, how many of us would have said, box at 4th and Main broken in triplicate? No! He figured out a way. He had the vision. Absolutely, positively, overnight guaranteed, and he figured out a way to make it happen. You've got to be flexible and creative. Things aren't going to go the way you expect. Okay, let's see. Number 9 is being. It's a kind of variation on empathy, but it's compassion. You've got to care. Compassion and what's the word in the middle of compassion? Passion. You've got to care. And if you care, you can lead people. People will follow you. If you're just going through the motions, they aren't going to care. You've got to understand them and listen to them. Listening is a huge leadership skill. Listening. And passion is one as well. That's what really changes the world. And when you won't take no for an answer, when you have perseverance, when you believe in what you're doing and you're passionate about it, you can move mountains. In fact, that's all that does move mountains. And then number 10 is the hardest to define and the hardest to identify. It's called character. And it's a combination of honesty, integrity, doing what you say you're going to do. And there's an old saying that if somebody has character, nothing else matters. And if they don't have character, nothing else matters. It's a matter of being real. And I believe that this is what people are looking for in American politics. A lot of politicians think that in order to win elections, you have to tell people what they want to hear. If you're interested in more money for the schools, I've got to come and say, yeah, I'm for more money for the schools. I'm not so sure of that. I think what people are looking for is somebody that's real. That's telling what they think and hoping that you agree. But if you don't, that's okay. I mean, that's been my philosophy of trying to make decisions. And I'll tell you a little story. When I was governor, I'd been in office about 3 months. And the transportation folks came to me and said, we have to decide where a bridge goes. It was somewhere in Hancock County or someplace. And they went into the description and said, now if you put the bridge over here, the people of Franklin are going to be mad as the dickens. But if you put it over here, the people of Hancock are going to be mad as the dickens. And I'm sitting here listening to this, and so I suddenly had this clear insight, realization, that wherever I did, somebody was going to be really mad. So then I said, well, why don't we just do what's best for Maine? Think of that. And not worry about it. And so throughout my political career as governor, people would constantly come up to me and say, I disagree with you on such and such, but at least I know you're trying to do the right thing. My favorite example was in a campaign speech, and a guy in the back of the room, I asked for questions, a guy in the back of the room said, what are your views on the rights of the unborn? Do you think it's pretty clear what his views were? I said, I'm pro-choice. I think it's a matter between a woman and her doctor. And I thought, well, I've lost that guy. And after the speech, he came up to the front and said, I've never heard anybody answer the question so directly. I'd like to volunteer in your campaign. Whoa. Even though he absolutely, he said, I'm a lifelong Catholic. I disagree with your position, but at least you told me. So what I'm saying is, being honest and straightforward is a very important part of leadership. And that's what character is all about. And the great leaders, if you think about them, Roosevelt, Churchill, those people have this strong character. They're not taking polls. Somebody talked about Margaret Chase Smith. I can't imagine Margaret Chase Smith taking a poll. She just did what she thought was right. Edmund Muskie. They just did what they thought was right. And so I'm not saying this is the whole list. There's a much longer list, but this is, I think, some ideas for you to think about. And this isn't being about a United States senator or a governor or a president. This is about any group that you're in. This is about any group that you're in. These are the qualities that I think will help you to work. So I'm sorry for the college lecture. I hope I didn't. They were talking today about teachers droning on. And I hope that wasn't this case. But it's wonderful to be with you. I will give you a very brief report about what's going on. I can tell you what's going on in Washington. You got it? You got it? Sorry about that. But we're working on it. I'm hoping when we get back, there's some things actually pending in education and other areas that I hope we are going to be able to do. But anyway, it's wonderful to be with you all, to be down here, and congratulations to particularly to the graduates of what you've achieved. It's really cool, and you're going to make a real difference in your community, and ultimately, that's the most important thing any of us can do. Thank you so much.